All right, last presentation for this session. I'd like to welcome Professor Paula Jazarbowski, I knew I would say that wrong and I do apologise, and Jimmy Scott from Queensland Reconstruction Authority to talk about the evaluating the resilient housing programs, lessons in Australia.
Okay, well, it's a great pleasure to be able to talk a little bit about this piece of work, which is currently ongoing. It's a collaboration between Natural Hazards Research Australia, Queensland Reconstruction Authority, and the University of Queensland, which are the partners co-funding this work, both in real cash and a lot of time, in-kind costs as well from the partners. I'm going to talk a little bit about the global lessons that we have developed to evaluate the Resilient Homes Fund, using this amazing cast of scholars who have worked with me, some of whom you've heard from as well earlier today with Matt Mason. And then I'm going to pass over to Jimmy Scott from the QRA to talk about the local lessons that are going on from this program. Just very quickly, these are some of the partners that we have in this, but I'd also like to mention NEMA, who of course sit behind a lot of this funding for the Resilient Homes programs. And the problem, as you can see, that we're addressing through these programs is a large-scale one. This is only one program for the 2022 floods in the 2021-2022 floods in southern Queensland. We shouldn't become too Brisbane-centric about what happened in February 2022. And the scale and the cost of that program for many houses that continue to reside in a floodplain. So this was an amazing and very novel policy for Australia. While we often have post-disaster grants of some sort, this one was a very large scale to specifically address individual private assets through buyback, raising or retrofit, and Jimmy will talk a little bit more about that. So our project has been to support the monitoring and evaluation, not only of it as an effective program being rolled out, but also future considerations for policy, which I'll talk about quite quickly now, because that's where we need some global lessons, like what can we expect in one of these programs. We looked at a number of programs around the world, selecting 7 of these specifically because they could help us to develop a useful policy benchmark to understand this program. I won't go into those. There is, in fact, a report that you can get hold of on the Natural Hazards Research Australia website for that. But some of the global lessons I think that we need to keep in mind are that these policies always hit a great deal of variation in the housing stock, the people, the capabilities to respond, the way that the disasters have affected them and their communities. So the first thing we should expect is that it's very difficult to roll out a uniform policy to a very varied audience. And alongside that, we need to consider, is this something that's part of an ongoing program, or is it something where we're starting anew? There are some, very few countries that have a long-term program of increasing resilience. There are others that start anew, and this certainly was a novel policy for Australia and for Queensland. What you need to expect is that no program rolls out without any hassles. That's an unrealistic expectation, and if that's what you're going to hold your policy to, then every policy is a failure. But we develop a useful framework of trade-offs from what we've learned around the world, in which you need to make some sacrifices, and I think those were amply captured in the earlier story, for example, about the Gold Coast. You need to make some sacrifices in one space to create benefits in another, acknowledging that that may then be the thing that comes back to bite you and fix later. We found 2 main trade-off areas. One is on whether it was collectively zoned or individual, because different policies are different. Certainly for Queensland, it's an individually based policy, so that has its strengths and weaknesses. And there's also issues of eligibility and equity, and we need to remember that those 2 words aren't the same. So a fair program in terms of everybody who was affected being eligible isn't also a fair program in terms of the equity and of people's ability to access a program. And those kinds of large ethical decisions are ones that have to be weighed off. As part of this, you also have to accept that people during a disaster recovery need to help to be mobilised, support agencies and other kinds of incentives that are beyond simply the program. And these all need to contribute to how we evaluate the outcomes of not just how many houses were fixed, but how did this group of policy implementers actually work with people to make sure that they could get through a challenging program. So we deal with success in that way in this program, and we also consider the feedback loops of how do we know whether what we do today feeds into the greater resilience of Queensland and Australia tomorrow. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Jimmy, who's going to tell you a little bit about some of the local lessons, how they're playing out. And I'd also just like to give a shout out to our colleagues, who some of you are in this audience, who are working with us from Department of Housing and Public Works and from QRA on actually evaluating and implementing this program. Jimmy.
All right, good afternoon everyone, and thank you very much, Paula. The Resilient Homes Fund, it's a very significant program, and it's a very significant investment that the state and Commonwealth have made in the program. And I think it's fantastic we've been able to use it as an opportunity to do some evaluation and really identify some lessons that can inform future programs of a similar nature into the future. As Paula mentioned, this program was really about partnerships, not only in terms of the evaluation. We're very grateful for the assistance of the NHRA, as well as, of course, NEMA, who have co-funded with the Queensland government, but also the insurers and universities that have been involved. So University of Queensland, University of Melbourne, and the key insurers as well. In terms of the implementation of it, there was a very large household resilience component of it, which you'll see is, the home raise, the home retrofit, which was administered by the Department of Housing and Public Works, and the buyback, which was administered by QRA. But another really important element that's still in delivery of it is the household and community education and the portals. A big thing of what we've heard today is about understanding risk and then communicating that risk, and that's one of the key things that this program is seeking to do. So in terms of the outcomes, and I'll look at the buyback program sort of principally there. There's almost 700 homes now that have been bought back, and you can see here that there are a number of benefits that have been outlined from that, and a number of councils, some of which who are in this room now, I know they have case studies of vacant blocks of green space that are flooded, but not for this program would have been a home and a family that had been impacted by a subsequent flood event. So really impactful. But for me, what summarised it best was the quote here by an anonymous participant. And for the record, it's not the people that are in the photo, that's just another program participant. But they mentioned that the buyback program marked the end of a long chapter for our family, one that was filled with uncertainty and stress due to the constant threat of flooding. The communities that participated in this program had sustained repeated flood events, in some cases 3 times in 10 years. So the program was very welcome for them indeed. Now, of course, there are other programs that are also underway. Of course, for quite a number of years, the Department of Housing and Public Works has administered the Household Resilience Program in North Queensland, which is really focused on building resilience to wind and cyclonic events. More recently, we have the Stronger Homes grant that was approved for North Queensland in response to the flooding there early this year, which is really focused on building, retrofitting, using the recovery as an opportunity to incorporate some resilience. But of course, one of the key things that we hear regularly from communities is that how are these efforts being factored into my insurance premium? We understand that one of the key things with insurance is understanding risk, but then also understanding where mitigation has taken place. How is that being factored in? And in September, QRA convened a roundtable, a rural and regional insurance roundtable in Charleville, to look at just that matter, having representatives from each of the 6 councils of South West Queensland Regional Organisation of Councils, as well as NEMA, the Insurance Council of Australia, and major insurers. And we're really trying, with the support of the Australian government and the work they're doing with the Hazard Insurance Partnership, we're really trying to strengthen that nexus between risk mitigation and insurance into the future. Thank you very much.
Right, we do have a question.
There are lots of suppliers that can do program evaluation. Why did you decide to partner with researchers on a project like this?
So this was a very significant program. It's the largest program that Queensland had ever done, and one of the things that we found very appealing with working with the University of Queensland as a very capable research institution in southeast Queensland, but also with Natural Hazards Research Australia, they could bring really a national lens. And one of the things that Paula is looking at is not only the Resilient Homes Fund here in Queensland, but there's also similar work underway in New South Wales as well. So I think it's important that we don't look in isolation just within our own borders at what's happening with the Queensland program. But Paul has also been looking across the border as well. So that sort of national application for us was really appealing. And also the fact that NHRA came with joint funding may have played a part with it as well.
Any questions from the audience inside? Oh.
Yep. I'm behind you.
And just quickly, that's not Paula. That's Paula leading an amazing team of actuarial scientists, engineers, planning and urban design people, and real estate economists, as well as anthropologists and business people. So not Paula, Paula and a very big team.
Thanks for the presentation. I'm just wondering, when funding is provided to essentially lift houses, what is occurring to make sure that, you know, the inevitable, you know, building in underneath the raised house doesn't occur, and then they're kind of adding to their, you know, vulnerability in that way?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, and it was definitely something that we looked at in the design of the program. We've been working with councils in the area to ensure that they have up-to-date flood risk information for their homes, and that then, or for their communities, and that then features into the building approvals that are given, particularly when we have homes that are raised and the like. Of course, there'll always be instances where people may do unlawful works under their home and do so without the approval of the local government. It's very difficult to stop that, but what we have been able to do is to work with the councils to make sure that they've got the up-to-date flood risk information, and therefore that when the requests come in for development and building of habitable space, etc., that's then featured in. Paula, I'm not sure if you have anything you'd like to add to that?
Yes, and I think that is one of the things about the way we're developing this evaluation, is that it's not just evaluating the program rollout and the high quality of that, but also what are the feedback loops that we are creating for the future. So can we keep these properties identified? Can we keep them on record? Should there be some future policymaker who wants to start building mitigation in? Should we have sort of annual inspections, or, as you say, sort of even zoning and some sorts of collective types of policies here? So they're part of the policy aspects of what we're evaluating, not just the program implementation aspects.
Do you have plans to extend this program to other disasters like wildfires and earthquakes?
The government hasn't made a commitment to extend this program beyond its current scope. So the $741 million applies to the 2022 event. We have considered, and the government has approved some comparable programs since. The Stronger Homes Grant was one, which was North Queensland focused. But at this stage, there's no plan for extension beyond.
How does raising homes equate to accessible housing? Are there considerations of accessibility?
That's another really good question, because you'll see in some of the areas where house raises have been considered, in order to raise the habitable floor level to a point that's above the flood level, you have some quite high homes indeed. So I think it's some of these raised homes may not have the same level of accessibility as some of the less raised homes, and that it will be an ongoing issue. And I guess some of these homes that have been raised may not be for every member of every member of the community, and given accessibility requirements.
Should I speak to that for a moment? One of the strengths, I think, of the individual nature of the Queensland Reconstruction Authority program is that people can make their own choices. You get recommendations, but it is understood that some houses aren't suitable for raising, even if they're in high inundation levels, but also that some individuals, for whatever set of reasons, may choose a resilient retrofit, which would allow them to get back into their home more quickly, rather than them being forced, if you like, to take a raise. So there are always trade-offs in an individual approach, but that voluntary nature and that supporting people to make the right decision for them and their capabilities really strongly underpins the way this program is implemented.
Thank you both. There's a few more questions, but we'll pass them on to you afterwards to respond to.
Very good.